You won't believe what Michael did to the wives of fallen angels. Introduction. In the realms of sacred texts and ancient stories, few tales resonate with such intensity and mystery as that of the fallen angels and their forbidden union with human women. This narrative, deeply rooted in the apocryphal Book of Enoch, stretches beyond mere myth and enters the realm of divine disobedience, celestial turmoil, and earth-shattering consequences. What happens when beings of unimaginable power, entrusted with the highest duties in heaven, abandon their sacred roles and fall prey to the allure of mortal beauty? The result is nothing short of cataclysmic. As we delve into this extraordinary story, we are confronted with profound questions about the nature of good and evil, free will, and the boundaries of divine law. Why would these angelic beings, who had witnessed the glory of heaven, defy the very creator they were sworn to serve? And what was the ultimate price they, and humanity, had to pay for their transgression? The story unfolds with a series of bold decisions, leading to the birth of the Nephilim, monstrous offspring with immense power, capable of wreaking havoc across the earth. But this union of heaven and earth did not go unpunished. As the narrative progresses, it reveals the divine wrath of God, who sought to cleanse the world of its tainted creation through the devastating force of the Great Flood. Yet, amidst the destruction, the fate of the fallen angels' wives is equally tragic, cursed to become sirens, forever tormented by the weight of their choices. So, what truly happened in this tale of heavenly rebellion and earthly destruction? What can we learn from the actions of these angels and their human counterparts? Let's journey together into each part of this story to uncover its mysteries and bring clarity to the truth behind the tale. The love of the fallen angels and their betrayal of God. The love that the fallen angels developed for human women represents a profound moral and spiritual failure that transcends simple lust. These angels, created as pure and divine beings with celestial wisdom, were meant to guide and protect humanity. They were tasked with overseeing the natural order of the world, serving as messengers of God, and maintaining a sacred distance from the mortal realm. However, in their disobedience, they transgressed not just a physical law, but a fundamental spiritual law. By falling in love with human women, they broke their sacred bond with God and sought to transcend the boundaries that had been set for them. This was not merely a violation of divine order, it was a direct act of rebellion against the Creator. What makes this story particularly compelling is the nature of this betrayal. The angels were not seduced by human weakness or desire for power, but rather by something more profound, a desire for intimacy with humanity, to experience emotions and pleasures that they had never known in heaven. This is what makes their fall so tragic and human. It was not a lust-driven impulse, but a deep, existential longing to connect with something beyond their divine nature. It reflects the dangers of ignoring boundaries, of letting desires and emotions cloud judgment. Furthermore, their love for human women was not merely physical, it was deeply rooted in the emotional and spiritual realms. These angels sought to elevate human women into the celestial sphere, merging the divine with the mortal, creating a bond that was never meant to exist. This is a direct violation of God's will, which intended for heaven and earth to remain separate. The angels' act was an assertion of their free will and desire to experience what was forbidden to them. This moment of choice echoes through time, reminding us that all acts of disobedience, no matter how pure the intention may seem, carry heavy consequences. By choosing to love against divine will, they doomed themselves and humanity to a cycle of suffering and destruction. The rebellion of the angels and the birth of the Nephilim. As the angels descended from heaven to earth, their rebellion took on a more physical and terrifying form. Their union with human women did not just lead to the creation of offspring, it led to the birth of the Nephilim, a race of giants whose power and abilities were beyond comprehension. These Nephilim were not just beings of great size, they were imbued with a supernatural strength and intellect, a result of the fusion of divine and mortal blood. The birth of the Nephilim represents the corruption of creation itself, the distortion of the divine plan for the world. The angels, who were once paragons of wisdom and grace, had now become the architects of chaos and destruction. The Nephilim were not simply creatures that walked the earth, they became rulers, tyrants, and conquerors. Their immense physical strength allowed them to subjugate humanity, destroying villages and civilizations without fear of retribution. They were giants, not just in stature, but in their ability to dominate the human race, and their very presence on earth was a constant reminder of the angels' sin. The Nephilim's strength was both a gift and a curse. They were born of the heavens, but their powers were used for corruption rather than for good. Their existence represented the breakdown of divine order, as celestial beings had created something that was inherently flawed. As the Nephilim wreaked havoc, the earth was plunged into a state of moral and spiritual decay. These beings were the result of the merging of the divine and the human, a creation that was not meant to exist. Their actions brought about a spiritual crisis, leading to the question of what happens when the divine realm interferes too heavily with the mortal world. The Nephilim's existence disrupted the natural balance and heralded the unraveling of the world as it was known. Their birth marked the beginning of an era of tyranny and darkness, with the Nephilim acting as agents of destruction. Their role in this narrative is symbolic of the consequences of overstepping divine boundaries. Their very existence represents the dangerous consequences of the rebellion of the fallen angels, and their actions would set in motion the need for a divine cleansing. Thus, the rebellion of the angels and the birth of the Nephilim serve as a warning against hubris and disobedience. When the boundaries between heaven and earth are crossed, when divine will is ignored, the results are catastrophic. The Nephilim's power, derived from both heaven and earth, was a force that could not be controlled, leading to the ultimate downfall of the earth in the form of the Great Flood. The angels' rebellion, far from being an isolated act, set in motion a chain of events that would bring about the end of an age and the beginning of a new chapter in the divine narrative. The Great Flood, God's punishment and the consequences for earth. The Great Flood, as described in the Book of Enoch, serves as the most profound and final response from God to the disobedience of the fallen angels and the subsequent creation of the Nephilim. The world, once pure and harmonious, had been corrupted beyond repair. The union between the angels and human women led to the birth of the Nephilim, powerful beings whose existence wreaked havoc on the earth. The violence, chaos, and moral decay introduced by these giants became unbearable for both humanity and the earth itself. In this context, the flood was not just a physical disaster, but a divine cleansing. God's wrath was not born out of malice, but rather as an act of justice. It was necessary to remove the corruption that the angels had introduced into the world, which had polluted both the human race and the natural world. The flood was intended to purify the earth, wiping out the Nephilim and their wickedness. Yet it was also an opportunity for redemption. By wiping away the sin of the past, humanity was given a chance to start anew, to rebuild a world without the corruption of the fallen angels. This event illustrates the severity of divine justice. God's will is unyielding, and when the balance of creation is threatened, there are consequences. The flood acted as a powerful reminder to humanity of the delicate balance between heaven and earth, and how easily that balance could be disrupted when divine laws were violated. The aftermath of the flood left the world forever changed, with humanity now tasked with upholding moral and spiritual integrity in the face of divine oversight. It is a harsh but necessary reminder that all actions, whether divine or human, have consequences that resonate throughout time. The curse upon the wives of the fallen angels. While the punishment of the fallen angels themselves is well known, the fate of their wives, the human women they took as partners, is a far more tragic and lesser-known part of the story. These women, who had once been revered and cherished, found themselves the victims of a cruel, divine retribution. As the wives of the fallen angels, they were cursed to become sirens, creatures of myth, half human and half bird, bound forever to the realms of both the human and the supernatural. The curse placed upon these women was not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. They were condemned to wander the earth, tormented by the consequences of their choices. Their punishment was not only to bear the shame of their union with the angels, but also to endure the isolation and suffering that came with it. In becoming sirens, they were stripped of their humanity, forever trapped between two worlds. They were no longer able to live normal lives or find peace, as they were bound to a fate of sorrow and unending mourning for the decisions they had made. The love they shared with the angels was beautiful and forbidden, but it ultimately brought them nothing but torment. This curse serves as a potent symbol of the consequences of defying divine law. While the fallen angels were punished for their transgressions, the human women were left to bear the emotional weight of their actions alone. The sirens became a metaphor for the dangers of crossing boundaries and the irreversible impact that such decisions can have on the lives of others. The tragic fate of these women reflects the harsh realities of divine justice. No one, regardless of their role in the story, is exempt from the consequences of defying the will of God. These women, once human and loved, were transformed into creatures of sorrow, embodying the deep emotional pain that accompanies acts of disobedience and betrayal. Analysis of modern society and lessons learned. The story of the fallen angels, their union with human women, the birth of the Nephilim, and the subsequent Great Flood carries profound lessons that transcend its ancient origins. When examined through the lens of modern society, the narrative offers a cautionary tale about the dangers of overstepping moral and ethical boundaries, as well as the consequences of ignoring the greater good for personal desires. In today's world, we are constantly pushed to innovate and advance, especially in the realms of science and technology. The pursuit of knowledge and power is often driven by the desire to enhance our lives, yet, just as the fallen angels sought to transcend their divine boundaries, humanity too sometimes disregards the natural limits of creation. Whether it's in genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, or environmental exploitation, the temptation to control or manipulate forces beyond our understanding is ever present. Much like the angels who defied the laws of heaven, we may be prone to crossing lines that should remain uncrossed, believing that we can handle the consequences of our actions. The creation of the Nephilim, born from the unnatural union between the divine and the mortal, echoes a warning in today's world. humanity has entered into partnerships with technology, artificial intelligence, and genetic modification that could have unforeseen consequences. Much like the Nephilim's destructive power, these innovations, while promising progress, may also unleash forces that humanity cannot fully control or predict. The emergence of these new beings, whether they are genetically modified organisms, AI entities, or even societal movements, poses a challenge to the natural order of things, and we must be cautious about how far we are willing to push our influence. Moreover, the story also highlights the dangers of unchecked ambition. The fallen angels were motivated by a desire for something they were not meant to have, a longing to experience the forbidden. This ambition, while seemingly noble or innocent in its desire for connection, ultimately led to destruction and chaos. In the modern world, we often see similar patterns. The ambition for wealth, power, and success can lead individuals, corporations, and even nations to make decisions that prioritize short-term gain over long-term consequences. Whether it's environmental degradation, unethical business practices, or political corruption, these acts mirror the same reckless ambition of the fallen angels. The consequences of such ambition are often felt by innocent parties, just as humanity suffered the consequences of the angels' transgression. Finally, the Great Flood itself offers an important moral lesson for modern society. The flood was not only an act of divine judgment, but also an opportunity for renewal and redemption. In today's world, we may face a kind of flood in the form of environmental destruction, political turmoil, or societal breakdown. However, just as the flood allowed for the possibility of a fresh start, modern societies have the opportunity to course correct. The lesson here is that even in the face of catastrophe, there is always a chance for renewal, but only if we learn from the past, respect natural laws, and recognize the importance of balance and humility. In sum, the ancient story of the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and the Great Flood serves as a timeless reminder that our actions, whether personal, societal, or technological, carry weight. We must be careful not to overstep the boundaries set by nature, ethics, and divine law. By reflecting on the consequences of past transgressions, we can avoid repeating the same mistakes, build a more ethical and balanced society, and ensure that we do not unleash forces beyond our control. Conclusion and real-life lessons. As we reach the end of this ancient yet timeless story, we are left with a powerful reflection on the consequences of defying divine order and moral boundaries. The tale of the fallen angels, their forbidden love with human women, the birth of the Nephilim, and the catastrophic Great Flood is not merely a story from distant times. It is a mirror reflecting the struggles of humanity today. It speaks of temptation, transgression, and the inevitable punishment that follows when the natural and divine order is disrupted. Yet, it is also a story of redemption, of the possibility of renewal even in the face of immense destruction. The ultimate lesson here is one of humility, respect for boundaries, and the recognition that our actions have far-reaching consequences. Just as the fallen angels sought to transcend the limits set by God, so too does modern society often strive to push beyond natural laws and ethical considerations. We are tempted by the allure of power, knowledge, and control over the forces of nature. But, like the Nephilim, when we stray too far from our inherent human nature and fail to recognize the sanctity of balance, we risk unleashing forces we cannot contain. However, the story is not without hope. The flood, while an act of divine wrath, also represents a fresh start, a chance to rebuild and realign with the higher purpose. In our own lives, we too are given opportunities for redemption, for cleansing the consequences of our past mistakes and starting anew. The flood offers a reminder that no matter how far we have fallen, there is always a path to renewal if we are willing to face our wrongs and make amends. In the modern world, we see these lessons reflected in the real-life challenges we face, from environmental crises to the ethical dilemmas posed by new technologies. We must ask ourselves whether we are living in harmony with the natural world and the moral laws that govern it. Are we, like the angels, allowing our desires and ambitions to blind us to the greater good? Or are we striving to live with integrity, recognizing the sacredness of balance and the consequences of our choices? The story also teaches us the value of reflection and repentance. Just as the angels were cast down for their transgressions, humanity too must learn the importance of self-awareness and the willingness to change. In our lives, there is always room for growth, for learning from past mistakes and for making things right. Each step toward humility and self-correction is a step toward healing, not only for ourselves, but for the world around us. Let us remember that while mistakes are inevitable, it is our ability to reflect, repent, and strive to do better that truly defines our path. May we, in the face of adversity and temptation, choose the path of wisdom, humility, and moral integrity. May we live with the awareness that our actions have profound impacts, and may we be ever mindful of the boundaries that protect both ourselves and the world we inhabit.